When the world starts coming apart, everyone suddenly has a plan. The bug-out bag is packed, the back roads are memorized, that perfect quiet corner of America is bookmarked on Google Earth. Here's what nobody wants to hear. Most of those plans are just elaborate ways to die somewhere scenic. Because large chunks of modern America only exist because we're performing continuous technological CPR on them. Stop the CPR, and these places don't gradually become difficult. They transform into kill boxes, where the landscape itself is the weapon, and your survival knowledge means absolutely nothing. Today, I'm walking you through 9 locations that will surprise you. Not the obvious disasters everyone jokes about. These are places that preppers seriously consider, that actually look smart on paper, that seem to offer exactly what you'd want in a crisis, right up until the moment you realize you've locked yourself inside a slow-motion execution chamber. Let's start with America's most honest liar. 1. Las Vegas, the mirage that evaporates first. Las Vegas doesn't pretend to make ecological sense. It's a neon middle finger to natural limits, delivered with dollar shrimp cocktails and Celine Dion. 2 million people sitting in the Mojave Desert receiving 4 inches of rain per year. Every drop of water is borrowed from Lake Mead, which has been in a slow-motion death spiral for 20 years. The metro burns roughly 250 gallons per person daily when you factor in casinos pumping water into decorative fountains while people inside are losing their mortgage payments. Here's the elegant trap. Vegas has no graceful failure mode. There's no rationing phase or conservation period. The water either flows through those massive pumps or it doesn't. When it stops, you're not looking at a challenging survival situation. You're looking at concrete heat traps where summer afternoons routinely hit 115 degrees Fahrenheit, and the surrounding desert is so biologically empty that even the rattlesnakes seem confused about why they're there. You cannot hunt what doesn't exist. You cannot forage in a landscape that grows nothing without industrial irrigation. You cannot even shelter in place, because place becomes a convection oven that kills you in your sleep. 2. Manhattan, when density becomes the disaster. Preppers love talking about bugging in and rooftop gardens and vertical defense positions. They're describing a death sentence with excellent views. 70,000 people per square mile, most living in high-rises that stop being buildings and start being tombs the instant electricity dies. No power doesn't just mean inconvenience. It means no elevators, no water pressure above the 6th floor, no sewage removal, no refrigeration, and no way to escape except 20 flights of stairs you'll be climbing in the dark while carrying everything you own. Hurricane Sandy was the universe being polite. A 1-week preview where parts of Manhattan lost power, and we watched people trapped in high-rises, hauling water buckets up endless staircases, watching their buildings slowly transform into vertical latrines. That was with Con Edison working around the clock and the National Guard staging in Central Park. Now run that same week into month 2 with no repair crews, no cavalry, and no timeline for restoration. The rivers surrounding you? Brackish, tidal, completely undrinkable without industrial desalination you won't have. The wildlife? Rats and pigeons, which sounds darkly funny until you're actually trying to trap pigeons on a luxury penthouse terrace because your family hasn't had protein in 9 days and you can hear your neighbors screaming 3 floors down. Manhattan isn't the place to bug out to. It's the place you should have left 3 days ago while the bridges were still moving. 3. Phoenix, Suburbia's cruelest lie. Here's where we start talking about places that actually fool people, because Phoenix has successfully convinced itself and everyone living there that the desert is optional. 5 million people sustained by one of the most audacious engineering projects in American history, the Central Arizona Project, a 336-mile canal that pumps Colorado water uphill using electricity consumption that would power a small nation. Cut that power and the entire hydraulic system collapses within days. But Phoenix is more dangerous than Vegas, specifically because it doesn't feel dangerous. Vegas knows it's absurd. Phoenix has lawns. Phoenix has sprawling suburbs that stretch to the horizon. Phoenix looks and feels like normal American life, which means people will stay longer, believe harder, and die slower while telling themselves it'll work out. Without air conditioning, your walls hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit, while your child's forehead is already burning. You can't step outside to cool down, because outside is hotter. You can't find shade, because shade doesn't exist in meaningful form. The valley's bowl shape traps heat like a Dutch oven with no ventilation. By day 4, the smell of collective panic becomes something you can taste. But what if the trap looks like paradise instead of a furnace? South Florida, nature's cruelest bait and switch. Miami and the broader South Florida region are the longest-running practical joke nature has ever played. Stunning weather, ocean access, tropical abundance, international culture, all built on porous limestone at an average elevation of 6 feet above sea level. The water doesn't wait for hurricanes. South Florida already floods on sunny days, through a phenomenon locals have nicknamed sunny day flooding. The ocean doesn't come over the land, it comes up through the ground. Because you can't seawall limestone, it's like trying to waterproof a sponge. Add any major storm, or simply the failure of the massive pumps currently cheating gravity 24/7, and the entire region becomes a half-submerged biological hazard zone. You're geographically boxed. Atlantic Ocean to the east, the Everglades, a sawgrass maze that will swallow you alive to the west, and exactly one escape route north on highways that become parking lots during normal holiday weekends. The humidity turns every scratch into a septic wound. The heat turns every corpse into a disease incubator. The mosquitoes throw the block party of their evolutionary existence. South Florida doesn't just flood. It turns into toxic soup that cooks its own diseases. 5. Los Angeles, the Convergence Zone. Preppers look at those canyons and see tactical strongholds. They see mountain retreats and ocean access, and year-round growing weather. They're seeing the world's most elaborate trap disguised as America's dream city. 10 million people in a semi-arid basin whose water arrives from hundreds of miles away through aqueducts and tunnels that require constant power and maintenance. Food trucks in daily from the Central Valley through a transportation network that already collapses during normal rush hour. Now add the wildfire dynamics that get worse every year. Santa Ana winds pushing flames through residential neighborhoods at speeds that make evacuation a coin flip rather than a plan. Layer that on the Big One earthquake that seismologists keep promising is statistically overdue, and you've got a scenario where the ground literally opens up while the hills are on fire and the water stops flowing, and 10 million people simultaneously realize the freeways are useless. But here's what makes LA uniquely devastating: the wealth inequality at scale. In peaceful times, it's a policy debate. In a collapse scenario, it becomes the spark that lights the powder keg. The city has torn itself apart during smaller disruptions. Remove the thin veneer of functioning law enforcement, and the social fractures become canyons. By week 2, you're not dealing with natural disasters anymore. You're dealing with armed neighborhoods fighting over the last working gas station while half the city burns and the other half has no water. How do you escape when every direction leads to a different kind of hell? 6. The Florida Keys, the most beautiful cage ever built. This one genuinely hurts because the fantasy is so seductive. Crystal clear water, fresh fish you can catch with your hands, island isolation far from mainland chaos, the ultimate low-profile bug-out location that preppers genuinely circle on maps and dream about. You're sitting on a 120-mile coral graveyard where the highest natural point is 18 feet above sea level, connected to the mainland by a single highway that's really just a series of bridges any motivated person with a stolen truck could permanently disable. There is zero fresh water except what's piped in from the mainland, or desalinated using, you already know, electricity.
And here's the revelation that breaks hearts. The same coral that makes the water so impossibly clear is exactly why your emergency well will be pulling salt water within 48 hours. The soil is pure sand and coral. You cannot grow food in meaningful quantities. The fishing sounds perfect until you realize 20,000 other people have the same idea and you're overfishing a limited reef ecosystem within weeks. But the real killer is the hurricane cycle. Hurricanes don't damage the Keys, they press delete. The Keys don't offer strategic isolation. They offer the slowest, most scenic cornering you'll ever experience, with a beautiful view of the storm that's going to erase you. Number 7. New Orleans, the city that drowns itself. New Orleans represents one of humanity's most arrogant architectural decisions, building a major city in a literal bowl below sea level, kept dry only by constant mechanical pumping and levees that have already failed on national television. Katrina was the preview screening, 80% of the city underwater, bodies floating in the Ninth Ward, complete social breakdown, armed gangs operating in day broad light, and that was with the world watching and federal intervention eventually arriving. Now remove the audience, let the pumps die, let the city fill like a neglected bathtub and stay filled. The water isn't clean floodwater. It's a toxic bacterial stew of raw sewage, industrial chemicals, gasoline, decomposing bodies, and everything that was in everyone's garage. The heat and humidity turned the entire metro area into a petri dish running an accelerated disease experiment. By week 2, you're not dealing with flooding anymore. You're dealing with waterborne plagues spreading through a population that's drinking contaminated water because there's no choice. Cholera doesn't send invitations. It just shows up and starts working. The historic architecture that makes New Orleans culturally irreplaceable becomes tactically suicidal. Ground floors are submerged. Upper floors become isolated islands. Every movement requires wading through contaminated soup where any open cut becomes a fast-track systemic infection. But what happens when the environment itself wants to kill you, even without the flood? Number 8. Remote interior Alaska, the fantasy that freezes you solid. This one destroys more prepper dreams than almost anything else because Alaska has been sold as the ultimate pure wilderness escape, the place where real men go to live off the land like our ancestors. Let me be very clear. In summer, certain parts of Alaska almost live up to that romantic vision. In winter, the remote interior and far northern regions stop being challenging wilderness and start being actively hostile alien planet. We're talking about sustained temperatures 50 below zero, months where the sun is a theoretical concept, conditions where a single wet boot, one torn glove, or a failed fire kills you in under an hour. Metal becomes brittle and snaps. Fuel gels into useless sludge. Batteries die instantly. Electronics fail. Your body requires 4,000 to 5,000 calories daily just to maintain core temperature, which means you're hunting or fishing constantly in an environment where game has already gone scarce and you're burning energy faster than you can possibly replace it. How long until your wet boot turns you into a statistic that nobody will find until spring? The indigenous peoples who have thrived in these environments for 10,000 years aren't just tougher than you. They're carrying inherited knowledge systems, community networks, and place-specific survival techniques that took millennia to develop and cannot be learned from YouTube videos or survival manuals. Showing up in the Alaskan interior with a high-end rifle and a romantic notion of living free is just expensive, cold suicide with better marketing. And then there are the people so desperate to escape other humans that they run straight towards the place that holds the world record for trying to kill people. Death Valley still holds the highest reliably recorded air temperature on Earth, 134 degrees Fahrenheit, with ground surface temperatures that routinely exceed 200 degrees Fahrenheit. You can literally watch your water supply evaporate in real time while your brain slowly cooks inside your skull. But here's the elegant cruelty of Death Valley's design. It's not just hot, it's mathematically lethal. The distances between the few viable water sources are spaced with such precision that the amount of water you must carry to reach the next source weighs more than you can physically transport, while simultaneously dying of heat exhaustion and dehydration. It's a closed equation that has never solved in humanity's favor. Would you bet your life on solving math that has killed fitter men than you? People die there every single year right now, with cell phones, GPS devices, and rangers actively searching for them. Experienced hikers underestimate distances, run out of water, and cook to death on the salt flats within sight of their vehicles. In a collapse scenario, there won't even be search parties. There will just be your bleached bones becoming another landmark that nobody will ever see because nobody else will be stupid enough to come looking. The geography of good intentions. You've now seen 9 different landscapes wearing 9 different masks: neon delusion, concrete canyons, suburban normalcy, tropical seduction, urban convergence, island imprisonment, architectural arrogance, frozen romanticism, and pure mathematical cruelty. Strip away the aesthetics, they all break the same fundamental law. These are places where human life at scale requires constant technological life support that doesn't degrade gracefully. It simply stops. Water piped from hundreds of miles away, single evacuation routes, climate extremes that technology has been quietly masking, population density that turns panic into a contagious virus spreading at the speed of realization. If you're inside any of these zones when the first real domino falls, your most valuable skill won't be fire starting, marksmanship, or knowing which plants are edible. It'll be the clarity and courage to leave early before the roads clot with everyone else having the same horrible epiphany at the same horrible time. The smartest retreat location isn't the most remote, the most dramatic, or the one that looks most tactical on your prepper Pinterest board. It's the unremarkable place where the soil, the climate, and the rainfall can sustain human life even after the trucks stop rolling and the grid goes dark permanently. Every single one of these 9 places is a monument to human ingenuity and human arrogance existing in the same structure. They're proof we can build almost anywhere. They're also proof that can and should are different words. In a collapse scenario, that difference becomes the gap between people who survive and people who become statistics with excellent final views. Elaborate ways to die somewhere scenic, just like I warned you at the beginning. Choose your ground like your life depends on it, because when the systems fail, it absolutely does.